I was standing at my father's funeral reception when my Aunt Helen stepped in front of me, blocking my path to the family table. She looked me up and down with cold eyes and said, "This section isn't for guests, sweetheart. Family only." I froze. My cousins smirked from their seats, while my uncle muttered something about me knowing my place. Then, the notary across the room cleared his throat, briefcase in hand. "My name is Vanessa, and I'm 34 years old. I'm a freelance medical transcriptionist working from home in Portland. My relationship with my late father was loving but distant. He traveled constantly for work, always on the move, always somewhere else. I was raised mostly by my mom, who passed away when I was 19, while my dad's side of the family, his sister Helen and her kids, always lived in the big family house on the hill. I wasn't rich or glamorous like my cousins, who wore designer clothes to brunch and posted photos from expensive restaurants. I worked odd hours, lived in a small apartment, and barely saw my dad's family except on holidays when I was invited out of obligation. But I had something they didn't expect. My father's trust. Not his money, his actual trust. I was the one who visited him in the hospital during his final months. I read to him, held his hand, sat with him through the long nights when the pain was worst. While the rest of the family was too busy with their important lives, I showed up. They treated me like I was invisible my whole life. They had no idea what was coming. If you've ever been the overlooked one in your family, the one they didn't think mattered, hit that subscribe button. I want to hear your story in the comments because I know you felt this too. Let's remind each other we're stronger than they think. Let's go. The funeral reception was held at Aunt Helen's house, the family estate with its manicured lawns and expensive curtains. I arrived respectfully, dressed in a simple black dress, carrying a small box of my father's favorite photos I'd compiled over the years. Pictures of him laughing, pictures of us together when I was young, memories I wanted to share. Helen greeted other guests with warm hugs and tearful smiles, but when she saw me, she gave me a cold nod. "Oh, you came." My cousin Brianna whispered loudly to her sister near the entrance. I'm surprised she could afford the gas to get here. I pretended not to hear and walked toward the memorial table where photos of my father were displayed. I tried to place my box there, thinking people might want to see these memories, but Helen intercepted me with a firm hand on my arm. "We've already arranged the display, Vanessa. We don't need your contribution." I stood there, hurt, holding the box awkwardly as guests turned to stare. Uncle Richard stepped to the center of the room and announced in his booming voice, "Before we begin the reception, I want everyone to know that Helen and I will be handling Dad's estate. It's complicated, and we're the ones who understand the business." My heart sank. No one had even mentioned including me in any decisions. I approached Helen privately near the kitchen, my voice quiet. I'd like to be part of the conversations about Dad's wishes. She laughed, actually laughed, and patted my shoulder like I was a child. "Sweetheart, this is grown-up business. You do your little typing job from home. We'll handle the real responsibilities." Brianna added loudly from across the room, "Besides, you barely knew him. We were the ones here." Then came the moment that made my blood run cold. Helen presented a large framed photo for the memorial wall, the whole family at Christmas 2 years ago. Everyone was there, smiling in their matching sweaters. Everyone except me. I had been visibly cropped out, my arm still visible on the edge where the cut wasn't quite clean. A guest noticed and asked innocently, "Oh, is that everyone?" Helen didn't miss a beat. Yes, the whole family. I stood there, publicly erased, as people murmured and glanced at me with pity. The notary, Mr. Brennan, witnessed everything from the corner of the room. his expression unreadable behind his glasses. He approached me quietly, his voice low and professional. "Miss Hartley, I'll need to speak with you after the service, privately." Helen's head snapped around. She marched over and snapped. "Anything regarding the estate goes through me first." Mr. Brennan remained calm, meeting her eyes steadily. "Actually, Mrs. Caldwell, it doesn't." A week after the funeral, I received a notice in the mail that Aunt Helen had closed my father's bank accounts and consolidated assets without informing me. My hands shook as I read the official-looking letter. I called Helen immediately, my voice tight with anger I was trying to control. "There wasn't much there anyway," she said casually, like we were discussing the weather. "I'm covering the funeral expenses, so really you should be thanking me." I took a breath. "I can contribute to the costs. I want to help." She cut me off with a sharp laugh. "With what? Your little typing job from home? Don't embarrass yourself, Vanessa." I later discovered through a family friend that Helen had charged the funeral to my father's estate, then reimbursed herself generously for what she called emotional labor and planning. 2 weeks later, Helen organized an estate clearing day. Family members were invited to come pick through Dad's belongings, take what they wanted, divide up his life. I showed up unannounced. Helen looked genuinely surprised to see me. "Oh, I thought you'd be working. Well, we've already gone through most of it." I looked around the house. My cousins were wearing Dad's expensive watches. They were packing his books into boxes, arguing over who got the leather chair, dividing furniture like it was a shopping trip. I walked up to Helen, my throat tight. "I'd like to have Dad's reading glasses and his favorite cardigan, just those 2 things." Brianna overheard and laughed. "The glasses? Mom was going to donate those. They're prescription. What would you even do with them?" Uncle Richard chimed in, holding a box of Dad's old sweaters. "And the cardigan has moth holes. You really want threadbare old clothes?" Helen sighed dramatically, like I was being difficult. "Fine, take them. I suppose someone should want the trash." I took them quietly, holding the soft cardigan against my chest, while my cousins laughed behind me. One of them muttered loud enough for me to hear, "She's like a charity case at her own dad's estate." Then came the final insult. Helen scheduled a meeting with a family lawyer to finalize estate distribution. I wasn't invited. I only found out because my cousin posted about it on social media with the caption, "Handling family business like adults." I showed up anyway. The lawyer looked deeply uncomfortable when I walked in. Helen's face went red. "Vanessa, this doesn't concern you. We're handling business assets and property. You don't have stake in any of that." The lawyer started to speak gently. "Well, actually, I should mention that there might be some—" Helen interrupted him sharply, her voice like ice. "I have power of attorney documentation. Everything was left to me to distribute as I see fit." She slid a paper across the table toward the lawyer, a document that looked official and intimidating. I was shaken, but I tried to stand firm. Dad wouldn't have wanted it this way. Helen leaned forward, her voice cold and final. "Your father trusted me with his legacy, not you. You were barely part of his life." Uncle Richard added, in what he probably thought was a kind tone, "You have to understand, Vanessa. You're young. You don't understand complex estates. We're protecting you from the burden." The family lawyer looked deeply uncomfortable, but said nothing. I left that office humiliated, my face burning, but I noticed something important. The notary, Mr. Brennan, had never been at this meeting. I drove home in tears, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. But then I remembered something crucial, something I'd kept hidden even from myself because it hurt too much to think about. 3 months before Dad died, he called me to the hospital late at night. It was past visiting hours, but the nurses let me in because he'd insisted. He was weak, his voice barely above a whisper, but his eyes were lucid when he held my hand. Vanessa, I need you to know something. Helen doesn't know everything. He pressed something small and cold into my palm. A key, brass, old-fashioned, with a number stamped on it. This opens a deposit box at First National. Only you, only your name. I've made sure of it. I was confused, scared. Dad, what is this about? He squeezed my hand tighter than I thought he had strength for. My will, the real one. Helen has a copy of an old version from before your mom died, when I didn't know better. I updated everything 2 years ago with Mr. Brennan. He knows, but I need you to be ready. He made me promise something that seemed strange at the time. Don't mention this until after I'm gone. Let them show their true colors first. Then you'll understand why I did what I did. I sat in my car now, back in the present, and pulled that key from my pocket where I'd kept it on my keychain. What they didn't know was that my father had been watching them for years, watching how they treated me, watching how they spent his money while he was alive and ignored him when he got sick, watching Helen skim from the family business and Uncle Richard borrow against properties without asking. My father saw everything, and he had been planning. I pulled out my phone and texted Mr. Brennan. I'm ready to talk. His reply came instantly. Good. They've gone far enough. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bring the key. I met Mr. Brennan at his downtown office the next morning. The building was old but well maintained, the kind of place that had been there for generations. Mr. Brennan was in his 60s, sharp-eyed, with gray hair and a compassionate but firm demeanor. He shook my hand and gestured for me to sit. Your father came to me 2 years ago, deeply troubled. He began without preamble. He'd watched Helen manipulate family finances for years, skimming from the family business, borrowing against properties without telling him, using his name on loans he never authorized. He slid a folder across his desk. Inside were documents, bank statements, transfers. Helen had been funneling money into personal accounts for years. Your father was old-fashioned. He didn't want conflict while he lived, but he wanted justice after. Then Mr. Brennan slid the real will across the desk. I read it, my hands trembling. The house, the business shares, the savings accounts. Everything went to me with explicit instructions that Helen received only a small fixed sum of $25,000. There's more, Mr. Brennan said quietly. The deposit box. We went to the bank together. I used the key with shaking hands. Inside were financial records proving every penny Helen had stolen, a handwritten letter from Dad explaining in his own words why he made this choice, and property deeds I didn't even know existed. Meanwhile, across town, Helen grew more arrogant. She posted on social media about family legacy and honoring her brother's memory, while wearing expensive new jewelry I knew Dad never bought her. She announced plans to sell Dad's house and split the proceeds among which she called the real family. Brianna commented on the post, "Some people weren't meant to inherit character or class." The family even threw a celebration dinner without inviting me to toast closing the estate successfully. Mr. Brennan watched all of this, showed me the posts, and said with a slight smile, "They're making this easier. Every move they make now will look worse when the truth comes out." I was nervous but resolute. When do we tell them? He picked up his phone. Tomorrow. Official will reading. I've sent the notices. They think it's a formality. The conference room at Mr. Brennan's office was formal and intimidating. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, the smell of old books and furniture polish. Helen arrived with Uncle Richard, Brianna, and 2 other cousins, all dressed smugly in expensive clothes. They looked like they were attending a celebration, not a legal proceeding. Helen saw me already sitting at the table and her face twisted. What is she doing here? Mr. Brennan remained perfectly calm. Miss Hardley is the primary beneficiary. She's required to be present. Helen actually laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. Primary? There must be a mistake. I have the will right here. She started to pull papers from her bag. Mr. Brennan's voice was steady and final. That document is from 2009, Mrs. Caldwell. It was superseded in 2023. The room went completely silent. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Mr. Brennan began reading the real will aloud. The house to Vanessa, the business shares to Vanessa, with clear instructions she could sell or manage as she chose. The savings and investment accounts to Vanessa. I watched Helen's face drain of all color. Uncle Richard stood up. "This is insane. He wouldn't do this. He wouldn't." Mr. Brennan continued reading without looking down. Helen Caldwell is to receive a one-time sum of $25,000 with the following stipulation. This amount reflects the love I have for my sister, diminished by years of financial dishonesty and cruelty toward my daughter. Helen stood, shaking with rage. "This is a fraud. You manipulated him. You manipulated a dying man." Mr. Brennan slid the embezzlement evidence across the table with one finger. "Your brother documented your unauthorized use of business funds, Mrs. Caldwell. $340,000 over 6 years. He chose not to prosecute while he lived. Vanessa can choose differently." I found my voice then, steady and cold. "All those years you treated me like I was nothing. You cropped me out of photos. You called me a charity case at my own father's funeral." Helen was desperate now, her voice breaking. "We raised you. We included you. We were family." I stood up slowly. "You tolerated me. My father saw the difference. That's why he made sure I'd be taken care of, and why he made sure you'd face consequences." Brianna tried to argue, but Mr. Brennan cut her off immediately. "The will is ironclad. Contested, it will trigger a full audit of family finances. I don't recommend that path." Helen realized she was trapped. The fight went out of her all at once. Uncle Richard collapsed into his chair, his face in his hands. I picked up my copy of the will and looked at each of them. "I'll be taking possession of the house next week. You have until then to remove your belongings." Then I walked out, leaving them in stunned silence. 2 months later, I was sitting in my father's house. My house now. I'd converted one of the spare rooms into a proper home office with good lighting and a comfortable chair. Dad's study, though, I kept exactly as he left it. His books on the shelves, his papers still on the desk, his reading glasses in their case. Helen and the cousins tried to contest the will, hired a lawyer, made threats, but they backed down fast when the embezzlement evidence went to their family business partners. Helen was forced to repay $200,000. The business board removed her from any financial decisions, and she lost her position entirely. Uncle Richard and the cousins stopped speaking to Helen, blaming her for ruining everything, for being too greedy, for getting caught. The family fractured completely. I ran into Brianna one morning at a coffee shop downtown. She saw me, and for a second our eyes met. She looked away immediately, her face flushed with embarrassment. I didn't gloat. I didn't say anything cruel. I simply nodded once and moved on. That evening, I sat alone in my father's study, holding his reading glasses in my hand. The afternoon light came through the windows the same way it must have when he sat here. "They thought love was measured in how much money you had, or how loud you spoke at family dinners," I said quietly to the empty room. "My father taught me it's measured in who shows up, who listens, who stays. I showed up, and in the end, that's what mattered most." I put on his cardigan, the one with the mouth holes that they called trash, sat in his chair, and smiled. If your family ever made you feel invisible or treated you like you didn't deserve what was rightfully yours, I see you. Drop your story in the comments. Tell me about a time you were underestimated and proved them all wrong. Subscribe to join our community of people who refuse to be erased. Click hype to help this story reach others who need it. Your story has power. If you felt a connection to mine, please subscribe and share your journey in the comments. Every hype you give this video helps empower someone else. Thank you for being here and for listening.